Another month has come and gone, and it's time to total up my income and spending to see how close I came to my budget. Keep watching to see how I did. Welcome back to Ready Budget Go. My name is Drew, and on this channel we talk about cash budgeting, saving money, and achieving our financial goals. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Today I am closing out my December budget, and I'm starting by filling in all of the income fields that remain on my monthly budget overview tracker. So I did receive a bonus at the end of December that my company was kind enough to gross up for me. So my $500 bonus ended up being $500 net to me after taxes. So I'm just going to add up my two paychecks and the cell phone reimbursement and the bonus, and then I'll add in the total here. My second paycheck was lower than my first. I'm on salary, so they're usually the same, but there was a group term life insurance offset that was put into the last paycheck of the year. So that affected that just a little bit. And now I'm adding up everything and sticking it into the totals at the bottom. And then from here, we will move on to the essentially the check register, but I call it the cash flow tracker, which is the inflows and outflows from my checking account throughout the course of the month. Now, I realized in doing this again for the second month in a row that I had made a mistake. I'm adding in the deposits here, which is my second paycheck and my bonus, which was paid separate. And then I will total those up and subtract all of the, or total up all the outflows and subtract those. I didn't have any other transactions come out of my checking account in the last few days of December. So just adding in those two payroll items was the last that I needed to transact. So now I'm writing in the ending balance for my checking account as of December 31st. And I'll add up the totals of all of the amounts that came into my account, and then I'll add up all the amounts that came out of my account. And when I add up the amounts that came out of my account, I realized that, again, I had missed a transfer to my emergency fund. So I caught the first one, but I didn't catch the second one. And so when I total all of this up, it is going to come up $205 essentially over or short, depending on how you look at it. So adding those up here, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't do anymore. They don't really reconcile their checking accounts like they used to, mostly because we've all but eliminated checks and the float. So as soon as you take cash out or you swipe your card or whatever, you see that reflected in your bank account balance or in your list of transactions pretty much immediately. And so there isn't as much emphasis on making sure that you aren't overdrafting by writing checks that there aren't funds to cover. But I do this just to make sure that I really am accounting for everything that's going through my account, and it also causes me to look at my account regularly just to make sure that there's nothing suspicious, that the amounts all match what I'm expecting, and that I don't miss any transactions like I did this time. So I've added up the total of the end balance plus the inflows to get this $11,114.33. I'm just making a note of it here, mostly because I'm still not used to using an adding machine style calculator. So now I've subtracted the total that I had and compared that to the ending balance, and now I'm realizing I'm off by $205. $205 is the amount that I transfer to my emergency fund twice a month. So you see I've got one entry there at the top, but I don't have a second entry. And so I realized that I need to add that in, and I will do that. And then I will re-add up the totals to make sure that I get the amount correct. And I'm going to have to get out the correction tape and redo it. I used to do this in pencil or erasable pen, and then I found that I was just going over it in pen anyway. So For me, it's easiest just to do it in pen. And if I make a mistake, I'll just get out the correction tape. It's no big deal. So I'm glad that I do this. It is kind of an extra step that I take that maybe isn't absolutely necessary. I mean, that $205 is already gone. And I knew that it was gone because I expect those to come out of my checking account. But at the same time, I just think it's a good measure of safety so that if anything does happen, if my debit card gets stolen, or if, not that I really use my debit card, or if anything comes through my checking account that I'm not expecting, I will catch it through this process. So just adding up the totals again here. And now I've got a different total. So I'm going to write that in here, $6,171.04. And I'm just messing with the correction tape here a little bit. And then I'm going to do the math again just to make sure that everything does line up. So start with the beginning balance, add in the inflows, subtract, oh no, I've made a mistake. So start with the beginning balance, add in the total inflows, and then subtract the outflows, and that should match up with the ending balance, and now it does. So I'm going to put a check mark there just to show that it balances, and then I'm going to move on to entering all of the expense items that came through my account in the last week of the month. So for me, the last week of the month started on the 27th of December and ran through January 2nd. I do this because my weeks always start on a Friday. And so because there was some slop over into January, there's a couple of January days in there too, just for the purposes of expense tracking. So these are transactions that go through credit cards. These are not things that go through my checking account, nor are they bills. So on my monthly budget overview, I account for my bills in their own section. So things like the rent, utilities, telephone, subscriptions, prescriptions, anything like that that are regular monthly expenses, I have those separated already. They tend not to fluctuate very much, and they're predictable, meaning that I know I'm going to spend those every month. This list of expenses here are things that are variable. So it's not always the same amount, it's not always the same date, it's not always the same place, etc. So I'm writing in here things that I spend on food, on transportation that I didn't plan for in my bills section, anything extra to what I have already planned for. I do also take out $100 in cash, or I have $100 in cash available to me to spend on a weekly basis. I don't always spend it all. In fact, I think I rarely spend it all. I always have a little bit of something left over. This week, I only spent $20 of it because I just wasn't in places that I was spending cash. So I had $80 quote unquote left over, but that was quickly consumed by all of my card spending. And in fact, I did go over on the card spending again this week because I made a last minute trip down to Oregon to see some family for New Year's Eve. So as a consequence of that, with me not being home, I had additional transportation expenses and I had additional meals out. So that busted the budget, not horribly, but at the same time, when you add that to the fact that I was over every other week, as in all of the other weeks of December, that really made an impact on the total. So fortunately for this trip, I didn't have to pay a hotel expense because I was able to redeem credit card rewards for that, but I did have to pay for transportation both ways. I flew down and I took the train back. So those expenses were already accounted for in the previous week, or maybe 2 weeks ago when I booked the tickets. But all of the incidentals now I'm adding here. So this one here is Hop Fast Pass, which is the public transit in the Portland area, just $5 there. I had a lot of expenses too for the week of Christmas, and one thing about spending money over Christmas is that the post dates on these transactions never really line up. So it looks like here that I had some no spend days. But in fact, I did spend on those days, and the transactions just didn't post for another couple days. And then I've got suddenly 4 restaurant visits in one day or something like that. So it's going to take me a minute to add in all of these expenses. At the start of the month, my goal one of my goals was to limit myself to only one page of expenses. And unfortunately, that didn't happen for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that for the Christmas quote unquote vacation that I took, it was sort of a staycation. I stayed just at a hotel here locally. Their in-house restaurant was either closed or serving a limited menu. So I had to go out for most other meals, and that incurred additional transactions, as opposed to that all just going on my hotel bill. And then this trip on New Year's that I hadn't originally planned on taking, that added in a bunch of other expense lines. So I'm going to hope that January is better. It should be. There won't be any holiday spending. My birthday is in January, so there will be some transactions for that, but shouldn't be anywhere near this many. So now that I've got all of those written down, and I did omit the cash spending, which I do put as a line item. You can kind of see up there, there's one for the previous week highlighted in purple. I'll add that in later, but for now I'm going to total up all of the line item expenses here and get the total. So as I'm going through this, I can tell already that I'm going to be over. I mean, we're at $188 and I still have half the transactions left to input. So I wouldn't say it's disappointing, but it was just reaffirming what I had already known from doing the November budget and setting up December, that I was probably going to need to increase my weekly allowance in 2025, and I've done that. So if you've watched my 2025 budget with me video, then you'll see that I put it at $250 a week instead of $200. So here we got to $300.87, so about $100 more than what I budgeted for the week. And now I'm going to return to the monthly budget overview, and I'm going to input that total in the line for week 4. And then I'm going to add that to the other weeks and get the grand total for wallet spending for the month, and it's going to be a barn burner. I had budgeted $800, and here we've got a total of over $1,300. So I am more than 50% beyond what I had planned on spending, for the reasons that I mentioned previously. So I'm going to input that here. Luckily, I did have that $500 of extra income to help, and the rest will come out of the remainder or buffer that I'd left myself. But I also had an overage in stockpile spending, which was for Christmas, and I came in a little bit under on bills. So altogether, I did underspend my income this month, but not by a lot. And there are some business expenses that need to get paid that were supposed to be covered by that remainder that now aren't. And also that bonus. I mean, by the time so when I found out that bonus was coming, I hadn't already booked my tickets. That came up later. So it was a trip that I am glad that I made. It was, one of my relatives asked me to make that trip, and so I gladly did that. But at the same time, I now have to rejigger what I'm doing in January. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when I summarize the month here toward the end of the video. But for now, what I'm doing is I'm just going through and I'm color coding all of the transactions, just as I do every week. And I pick a different color each week. It varies. So here I'm just highlighting in pink everything that came out of my account went onto cards in the last week. So now that that's done, I am going to turn over to the month-end summary or the month-end review. And I have pulled my budget overview out of the book because I need those numbers to input them here on this page. So I've got the planned amount, the final amount, and the difference for the income and each of the expense categories. And I'm also going to make notes where applicable of why things vary as much as they do. So for example, here I'm writing in bonus. The reason why my income was so much greater than what I had planned, almost 10% more, was largely due to the fact that I got a performance bonus at the end of the year. So then here I'm just inputting the bills amount, and it took me a minute because I couldn't read my own handwriting. This is one of those that I had to go over with the correction tape, and I kind of made a mess here, but got the amount, and then I am going to calculate the difference. So fortunately in my bills, I underspent a little bit because I had canceled some subscriptions and other things that came out of my account, and a couple things came in a little bit lower. So that was good that was less. It's not enough less that I'm going to, make a note of all the things that contributed to the difference. But I was happy that at least something came in under budget this month, because not many things did. So now I'm totaling up all of the wallet spending, or I'm copying over the wallet totals, and I am just calculating the difference. I don't know why I needed the calculator for this, but apparently I felt that I did. So overspend by over $550. Not good, but again, I if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have made most of the same choices. So I'm not going to kick myself too much. All I'm going to say is that it's still a learning experience. I think no matter how experienced you are in budgeting, you're always finding things that you could be doing better. And so part of the reason that I have the sort of reflection sections on this worksheet is so that when I'm looking at setting up my December budget for next year, I'm going to look back at this and see, okay, where did I finish in December of 2024? And what changes do I need to make, or what things do I need to watch out for to make sure that I don't make the same mistakes again? So here I'm filling in the information for the stockpiles and for my Roth IRA, which is a savings category for me. So I had to pull money back from my Roth IRA contribution in November for a different emergency. That was a weather-related emergency, and that was the budget buster then. But when the stock market really took a dive this month, I had the money in my checking account available to send over to my brokerage and contribute to my Roth IRA. So I just did it to take advantage of the discount essentially in the stock market. And so I don't regret that. I would have done the same thing had I had the choice to make again. So now I'm just writing in here the difference in the remainder, much smaller than I had anticipated. So not only is there a difference there, but I also don't have the additional income, because that was already spent, that I would have liked to have put toward business expenses. So I'll find another way. I'll talk about that a little bit again in the summary here. But so now what I'm going to do is put away the calculator and really reflect on what happened in the month. And I always want to start with what went well. What were the things that I was able to do that contributed to me, even if I'm over budget, that contributed to me not going more over budget? And so I'm just making a note here that I did resist the temptation to shop after Christmas sales. I think the holiday shopping season this year was quite good for retailers. I expect that a lot of them will be reporting good news in their annual reports and their quarterly reports, those that are publicly traded. So there weren't that many fantastic sales that I saw, but even if there were, I knew that I was already over budget, and so I really pulled that back. And I'm proud of myself for that, because that can be one of the toughest things to learn when you are trying not to spend like you've been spending in the past. Now, I've dug myself out of tens of thousands of dollars of debt already, so I'm already averse to going back into debt, but at the same time, it is so easy to do. So I give myself credit for not essentially just spending willy-nilly and giving into the fatalist thinking that, well, you're already over budget, so you might as well just spend. So I also spent New Year's Eve with family. I count that as a win. That was great. I'm glad I did that. Obviously, with the amount that I was over, I do need to look at my budget more closely when December 2025 comes around. I may need to pull from my emergency fund to cover some of these overages. We'll see. We'll see what January shapes up to be. And then I'm just making a note to myself here for next year that I should really consider buying Christmas gifts earlier in the year if I can. There's this temptation to wait because, number one, you want to make sure that you're in the holiday spirit when you're buying those gifts and you can take advantage of all the sales and whatnot. But at the same time, that leads to a lot of impulse shopping and making choices that maybe aren't the best. So that's it for the month-end review, and I will be back here shortly to summarize. So that's the story of my December. The overspending this month really blows me away, and it's interesting how the bonus I received dovetailed so well with the unanticipated travel costs. Because I didn't have that money to put into my business as I thought I would, I'm going into January behind the 8 ball. By the same token, however, we are at least through the expensive holiday season, and if you watched my video for my January budget with me, you'll see that I plan to give myself a little more money each week to help deal with some of those overages. I've got some big goals for this year, which include fully funding my emergency fund, making my full Roth IRA contribution, establishing a rainy day fund, and stockpiling enough cash for the big move, which I talked about in my 2025 goals video, which is one of the first videos, if not the first video, that I uploaded on this channel. Go back and watch it if you'd like to see what my plans are for the coming year. I'll be doing savings challenges and games to save up toward these goals, which I'm planning on uploading on Monday evenings, and I hope you'll join me for them. For now, I want to thank you for watching until the end of the video. I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already, and please remember to hit the like button and leave me a comment down below. Until I see you in the next one, take care.